Hi, welcome back to Natalie and Company. I hope you are having a great fall. I am certainly having one of the best reading falls I've had in a really long time. I thought I would share with you everything that I read in October because everything hit so good. We're just gonna go in order. So at the beginning of this month, I picked up 4 Treasures of the Sky. I picked it up for my random number generator video, which 3 of these books are. So if you want a more in-depth vlog of me reading this one or a couple of the others, you can click on it right here. 4 Treasures of the Sky is a historical fiction about a Chinese girl who is kidnapped and taken to America during the Chinese Exclusionary Act in the United States. Sad stuff. Jenny Tinkwei-song does history so well. It was so beautifully done. Everything about her writing style just fit perfectly for like a historical fiction. I'm not the biggest historical fiction fan, but this, like, her writing style for historical fiction is perfect, and I can't imagine this story being told in any other way. She does a great job at developing her characters, which are for the most part fictional, around the events that are non-fictional, in a way that it's not like overtly in your face. It's the experience of a real character, basically. I gave this book a 4-star, mostly just because it's not like, it's a historical fiction. It is not necessarily a gripping tale. It's more of a saga about our main character, Dayu, and her experiences. And so it's not necessarily like gonna hold you there to the end, but the flow of the writing and the development of the words and the characters is so beautifully done. It's like a perfectly done book, if that makes sense, because every piece and every detail is so perfectly placed and to come together to write a beautifully heartbreaking story, as most historical fiction turn to be. That's why I don't normally enjoy them, but this one I very, very much so enjoyed. Next, we have a monster, House of Leaves. I did it. I finally did it. I finally read House of Leaves after it being on my TBR for literally years. I don't necessarily think that I enjoyed it because it's like my taste or it's my thing. So 5 out of 5, by the way. So thoroughly enjoyed House of Leaves because it is unlike any other reading experience that you'll ever get. And I feel like that's what everybody says about House of Leaves. But if you're willing to sit down and take the time and take the space to literally to allow yourself to get absorbed in here. It talks about so many concepts so well, like liminal spaces, obviously, but it talks about sound and silence, and it talks about sex a lot, interestingly, which was something that I was not expecting. Like, it really gets into this like nitty-gritty spiral of philosophical concepts and nitty-gritty spiral of our characters in here that coincide with each other. Despite the weirdness of this book, the flow in it was really easy. I felt like there were some parts that were dense. I did have to reread some paragraphs, but because the flow of it, the arrangement of the pages, the writing style changed every so often, it really made it not get monotonous or boring in any way. If anything, I was like hooked because there was so much to go before I was gonna know the end, before I was gonna know the answer. You know, you spend a long time being a reader and you can kind of guess like what your reading experience is going to be when you go into a book. For the most part, I feel like it just like disarms you and it fills up all those little empty spaces in your head so that when you're not thinking about anything, suddenly you're thinking about this. You're thinking about liminal spaces, you're thinking about loneliness, you're thinking about the concepts that are pervasive in this novel's subtext. The details put into this are just so supremely well done. It must have taken so long to compile this and create all of the little gimmicks, because like there are definitely parts where it's like a citation and they're just citing a bunch of names, and you can kind of like, you know, there are parts that you don't need to read as intensely as other parts that you do need to read, but the author went through each of those elements like just as intensely. And so to think about that and all of the effort and skill that it takes to go like and create something so massive in concept and executed almost basically perfectly all on, you know, your own, like it's just so impressive. It's an impressive feat of literature. It's unlike any other experience that you're ever gonna get. So if you're a reader and you're getting tired of the same old thing all the time, maybe pick this up. It is dense. It is very dense. I'm not gonna lie. There are just gonna be some people that are just not going to care. They're gonna get into it and they're gonna be like, why do I care about this? What is the purpose of this? And that's fine. It's definitely not a book for everybody, but if you're willing to have the patience to sit down with it, it is a crazy experience. It has become a favorite book of mine. Definitely got moved to the favorite shelf after all this effort and time, and even hoping to reread it eventually, because I feel like during the first read through where I was trying to figure out the end of the mystery, I missed so many other details that weren't necessarily directly relevant to solving the mystery. And so like I think I'm gonna have to go back in, really redo it, rewind, reread it. That's the word I'm looking for. It feels so good. It feels so good to accomplish a big reading goal too. And that was a big thing too about October, is I really crossed off a lot of books that I had been waiting on, or books that I had been hearing about and had put off. Just like a lot of older picks that I have been waiting to get into, and every single one of them was just so enjoyable to get into. Next, we finally reached our Emmy recommendation of the month. Thank goodness. I am reading her recommendations literally all the time. So I have read so many of her recommendations. She's just so good at making, especially classics, sound so enjoyable, and has really taught me a lot about how to enjoy classics. I appreciate her content so much for that reason, and that's why we have The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. It's a short story collection, a horror short story collection written by Angela Carter, The Bloody Chamber being the titular story, also the best one in my opinion. I really enjoyed a majority of this book, but I still only give it 3 stars because it did that thing that short story compilations do, where they put the best one at the beginning and then they put the worst one at the end. And like, I can't do it. I don't have the patience. The last like 4 stories, I was just like, I'm ready to close the book and finish it, because they just felt like a drag. I like purposefully compiled and put in the back to hide away, whereas I think if you had reversed the order so that The Bloody Chamber was the story at the end, her best one was, in my opinion, was the one at the end. It just would have helped with the progression of her writing and the reader's enjoyment so much more. Maybe that's me as a modern reader looking at something a little more unmodern, me being like, the ending needs to be the most exciting part, but maybe that was just not the case when she originally wrote it, not what she was aiming for. Artistic, you know, we have artistic differences, and that's why this book was only a 3. But it's okay, because her writing is really supreme. A great October read, for sure, because it sets such a vibe. And so did House of Leaves. I forgot to say that. Everything that I read really allowed me to get into the Halloween spirit, like so much, that like I so intensely enjoyed this Halloween. Like with House of Leaves, I was very much so eased into that creepy atmosphere and the fear in the back of your head and things, and then as I got to like The Bloody Chamber and the other stories I read, got more specific about fantastical fear and everything like that. A great Halloween read, and super easy to get through, even though the last few stories can't win them all. I'm so excited to talk about this one because I need other people to talk about it with. I read the first 4 books in the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. We have Every Heart a Doorway, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Beneath the Sugar Sky, and In an Absent Dream. These are the first 4 of the Wayward Children series, which is a series about children who find doors that shouldn't be there, a door in the middle of a forest or something, and wander through to other realms, other dimensions, other worlds. Sometimes that makes sense, sometimes that make no sense. And oftentimes those children end up back in their original world and are forever changed because they lived in a different realm. They loved the different realm so much more than they ever loved the place that they came from. It talks so much about home and the concept of home, and also the concept of like caring for children a lot. There's a lot of different examples of different kinds of parents, but also there's a lot of examples of different kinds of people. I do enjoy the diversity in here. It's just like refreshing to not have to think that these children who went to different realms, some that are like, one world is entirely made out of just sugar and bread and everything baked. It makes so much sense that the characters themselves would have a lack or a change or a shift in their own societal perceptions, the things that they believe in, the things that they think. The trans representation in here is lovely. One of my favorite characters. Like, I've never read anything else by Seanan McGuire. I know she has some other series, but I think that her writing just has like the tiniest drip of fantasticality. That tiny drip is just enough for like this type of story, because this type of story is essentially rooted in reality, but there's so much also that goes beyond their reality, that like there's just so many concepts to explore. And she explores like fat phobia, and she explores disability like in these fantastical concepts, which I think is so great. She gives some great lines, some lines that are just like, you're like, oh, you wrote that, you fucking wrote that, you know what I mean? Since October ended, read the alternate between the main plot, and then every other story is a singular story about one child and their experience finding a new world and the evolution in it. So not only does she have this like fantastical plot that's being woven in between these children, in between these worlds, she has like entire character focused books. Like, I think my favorite has been In an Absent Dream, because she talks and ponders so much the concept of fairness in here. And I think that her thoughts on fairness and what it means to, give to your community or sacrifice for your community, or what it means to have things be fair for other people and not fair for you. The conversation that she creates in this one is so good. And it has nothing really to do with the overarching plot of the series, but it's definitely a favorite. As you can see, they are novellas, and they pack every bit of punch as a regular story does, and then but their audiobooks take like 4 hours to listen to. That's why I managed to get through so many. I'm in love, and I've been enjoying this world so supremely much. It's not like YA necessarily. It feels very much so for adults, but written about kids, which I think that Seanan McGuire does a really good job at making them like real people, even though they are children. But like, these children have been through really big experiences, and has a good job at defining these like fantasy quirks as issues that we deal with in our real world. Like, she just does a great job at making her point with her characters in her world. And I really enjoy that about her books, because I feel like I'm so completely immersed into a whole new world every time I pick one up, and they are so tiny. It's just so impressive to me that she was able to do that. And I will definitely be finishing the rest of the Wayward Children series, and I will let you know how that goes. Okay, next is the only book that I don't own, but I need to own it expeditiously because it is the best one that I read the entire month. And it was a random pickup. It was a read that I wasn't even meaning to read. It was because I go into Everand or Scribd and I was sitting somewhere, I didn't have a book with me, and I wanted to kill some time, and I find The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. Oh my god. I've never read a 5-star thriller before. Never. Like, when I compare my excitement that I felt during this book, the grip that I felt during this book, I'm like, wow, I've really never read a 5-star thriller, because the writing retreat was everything that I could have ever asked it for. It was entirely woman cast, and I thought that that was so interesting, intriguing, and unique. They did not need any men there. But not only that, like, I guess partially part of the plot twist, and we got to that point where it revealed that, and there were still 150 pages left of the book. It was a non-stop ride of ebbs and flows and so many different clues to so many different answers. Like, the reveals were so well done. Like, oh my god, I don't know how to portray like how much I just thoroughly enjoyed every second, every page. I literally sat down and read it in a day and a half, like 400 pages in a day and a half, because I just could not stop. The characters and their dimensions were so realistic to me. Like, the way that the interpersonal relationships, a conversation didn't just like make everything fine. The most important aspects, like the details in every scene, in every character, were there, and every tiny clue or reveal. Oh my god. I read it in my last reading vlog, so if you want to see me freak out about it there, you can click that here. What the hell? Like, I've never been that much of a thriller or a mystery person. I'm kind of getting into it now. Julia Bartz, man, she killed it. She killed it with her feminist analysis. She killed it with her analysis of the literary world. She killed it with her analysis of best friends that hurt each other. So real. Too real. Almost so real for me. It almost felt like it was healing parts inside of me that had been hurt in the same way that the main character had been. And like, wow. I never thought that I would say that I was being healed by a thriller book. Like, you see how impressive that is? Like, I go to thriller books to read for a page turner, for an easy read, for something that I can very much get lost in, and I couldn't get lost in this, despite how lost I was in it, because it was so real. It made me think about my own life. Like, I was like literally emotionally spiraling as the main character was, because I could relate so hard. It was so real, so realistic. And it was literally like out of nowhere, like a week before October ended. And I was like, oh, I'll just pick something up that I can read for right now, and I'm not gonna finish it, and literally did not put it down until I finished it. Like, amazing. I had so much fun reading it. Like, so, it was so much fun. 10 out of 10. A billion out of a billion. The best book I read this month. Absolutely. Which is pretty hard, because I read some damn good books this month. Second to last. Second to last. This is the second to last book. This is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I talked about my opinion on We Have Always Lived in the Castle, I think in my vlog, but this was freaking a completely different book. Like, You Have Always Lived in a Castle was very much so about the point that it was trying to make, was very much so about the purpose of isolation and you know, mob mentality. That she very much so went into We Have Always Lived in the Castle with a purpose. This is just so much fun. This is so much fun, on top of the fact that Shirley Jackson is an amazing writer. So much so that, like, despite this literally just being a blast, just being like so much fun, it sets a standard for haunted houses and has for years and years and years. Like, imagine just, you know, I'm just having some fun, and you pull this out of your soul and it becomes an immediate classic, because every description, every haunted house you've ever seen, everything, all of it has been based on this. I'm convinced. I know that's not probably completely factually true, but you just see the evidence of this, of Hill House in so many haunted houses that have followed. Like, I even saw in House of Leaves, like, some of the descriptions in here, I was like, man, was Mark Danielewski, was he inspired by House of Leaves? Because some of the ways that he talks about how the house is alive are so similar and akin to the ways that she talks about how the house is alive. Because in Hill House, the scary thing isn't necessarily ghosts or something haunting the house. The scary thing is the house. And I loved that idea too. I loved that concept. And that's not a spoiler because they talk about that in like the beginning of the book. Way that the characters talk over each other in this is so intriguing. It definitely makes it feel like everybody's talking to somebody but actually talking to nobody. And that gave like a very eerie and specific feeling that I don't think I've ever felt like in a horror novel before. Like because there's what, 5 characters in here, and the way that she overlaps their speech patterns and things that they would say it's like craze inducing to read almost. Had me on my toes the whole time. I was never able to guess what was gonna happen. Seriously, just like such a phenomenal read. So, and it's pretty short too. Like, it was just like a blast from beginning to end. I felt like I got into the ride. I pulled the bar down, we blasted off, and we were going through all the loop-de-loops and the turns and the slowdowns and everything. Like, what a ride. Finally, we have the only thing that feels out of place here, which is Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. This is a wonderfully done book. Brene Brown is a doctor that has basically studied emotions throughout her entire career. And what she did in this book is she basically creates a dictionary of emotions and feelings and things we might think are feelings but actually aren't. And so it's just like the most tender reference book you've ever read because it's so gentle and kind. Obviously, like, as a scientist, you can't discover everything that there is in the world. So there are gaps in the writing where there are gaps in her studies because, like, she's studied very specific things. She's studied loneliness, and she studied gratitude, and she studied leadership, but there were some things that were just like kind of outside the scope of the things that she's studied so far, that because the other sections were done so well and were crafted so thoroughly that there were some parts I was like, okay, I wanted more, but okay. Like, the love section is like literally 1 paragraph, and it's just like, people need human connection, people need love. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was all she had to say about it, but I get it. Like, when she was talking about the things that she has had direct study with, that she has directly encountered in her scientific existence, it was so beautifully worded and thought out. Like I said, like the nicest reference novel you'll ever have. And I think that's more so what it is like, it's not necessarily a self-help book for you to sit down and read from beginning to end. It is, I am confused right now. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm trying to figure this out. Let me see if I can crack this open and figure it out with the help of some words in here. And I think that approach really, it sets it apart from a lot of other self-help books because it's like accessible. It's like the information in here is accessible even in times of panic, in times of confusion, just in times where people might need it the most. Like, it's accessible for you, unlike a whole book about getting better that you have to read the whole thing to feel better. But the way that she defines emotions and specifically defines how they interact with each other, it's just such a well done book. Even though this is like the most inconvenient size book I've ever read. It was so, like, I read House of Leaves and that was easier to read and than this was. That was everything that I read in the month of October. One of the best reading months that I've had in absolutely forever. So I wanted to share it with you in hopes that maybe you can have a reading month as good as I did. This is my blessing for a reading month for you that was as good as the one that I just had, because everybody deserves that, especially nowadays. You know, things are hard. So I hope you get that reading month that feels just as good as October did for me. Subscribe if you like. I'd love to see you around here, and I hope you have a happy holiday season, a happy rest of your fall before the winter descends.